What if you haven't got a wealth of athletics knowledge? That comes from Yasmin Gregory.
Well, if you're there giving your time, you would try and make sure that you were with somebody who did have decent knowledge, and you would bring the excitement in that case, and they would bring the nuts and the bolts and the stats. You'd try and pair yourself with someone in that regard. Or if you were the only option and you were really up for doing it, you would be honest and you would say, I'm giving my time for free. I'm really up for helping, but I am new to this and I am not an out-and-out athletics expert. If you want to help, if you want to come up and give me useful stats throughout the day, you feel free. So you tackle that head. You either work with someone who has got the anorak level knowledge, or you front up to that right at the beginning and lay it out there, clarifying you're giving your time and that you'll do your best. That's how you handle that.
Okay, the next one from John Hubbard. For next week, what's the top tip for basic announcing at clubs? So I'll make a note of that and we'll bring that in next week.
Okay.
Bernard Jones, who do a lot of road races, and in particular they come actually thick and fast at the finish. It would be good to have some thoughts on dealing with that.
Okay, I've done quite a lot of announcing at road races, and he's right. It depends what level of race you're commentating at. I've done a few in the Middle East where they got this, and I'm not saying you would have this, but it might. I don't know how prevalent this level of technology is, but sometimes what you find is there's some kind of map that they run over with 100 meters to go, and the names flick up on this screen in front of you. I put this light on, didn't realize how dark it was. Names flick up on this screen, and you'll be able to glance at the screen and then look up, and you can read the number on the screen, and then you go, oh, so and so 2553. That's so and so from blah blah blah. Now, if it's at a lower level road race, you might not have that luxury. So what I would do, I think I've got it here actually. Hang on. So if you're doing a road race, you can't do this if you've got thousands and thousands of athletes. But I go to a shop and I get these massive bits of card, and I'll go through. I keep all this stuff. I'm a real anorak. So I've got, when I do the junior women, I've got every name on one bit of paper. I flip it over. I've got the junior men. Over again. I've probably got on one piece of paper on thick card, I've got 600 names at my instant access, right? So you buy a big bit of card and you do it that way. It won't always work, but you can flip that round and inside out and back to front quicker than you can mess around looking at an iPad. So that's one way you can do road races.
Another question I think we'll sort of answer next week's from Elizabeth Hawkins on what's the best way of finding opportunities to volunteer.
Is the what? Sorry, you went a bit quiet, Alison.
What's the best way of finding opportunities to volunteer? So we can cover that off next week with what's next type of.
Yeah.
And then Gabby says, top tips for dual language announcing.
Dual language?
In Spanish.
Wow. My God, that's incredible. Hang on. I can only speak a little bit of French. I don't think I could commentate in French. Wow.
It's two people, not me doing both.
Ah, right. So one's doing one language and one is doing the other.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay. What you would have to do in that context is, you basically just need to give a little pause. I mean, are you talking about, for instance, one person speaking in English for, say, a lead commentator, and the second commentator repeating what that first man or woman has said in Italian? Or are you talking about both of them leading, but one doing it in English and one doing it in Italian, for instance?
It's probably nearer the latter. It will be a meeting in Spain, so it will be a Spanish stream and Spanish announcing, but with a lot of English-speaking athletes and a lot of English-speaking watchers. So we're trying to plan how to do that. And I'm thinking ahead to, do we say the same thing in English and Spanish? Or do we just, do our own thing and try not to repeat each other?
That's quite interesting. I would say it would be quite hard to repeat verbatim what the other linguist is saying, but you could probably do a halfway house, couldn't you? Where say there's a 5,000 meters. There's some great distance runners in Spain, isn't there? Especially on the 5s and the 10s and marathons as well. I mean, how good was Julio Rey back in the day? Brilliant major championship marathon runner. So, in a course of, say, a 5 or a 10, there's no harm in the Spanish commentator, male or female, saying whatever he or she is going to say, and then you just have an understanding between the two of you that when he or she shuts up, then you get a bit of space and you don't talk over the top of each other. Or there might be a really good point that the Spanish commentator makes, and you might say, well, for those of you in English, thanks, Susan. For those of you in English, so-and-so, my colleague, has just made a really interesting point that the Spaniard leading is blah, blah, and blah, and blah. Keep it conversational. So then you're not patronising anyone. But the main thing is not to talk over the top of each other. And perhaps if you are doing two languages at the same meet, you make sure that you have an understanding that there's a little pause between one finishing and the other picking up.
Terry, you've got your hand up, is that correct?
Yes, I did. Sorry, I'm just hitting the road. I was asking, a lot of the conversation this afternoon has been about track events, and especially the sprints. But what tips do you have for covering field events, especially in stadium?
The great thing about the field events is that you can build to a conclusion, but of course, the level of information that you're able to give out is going to be heavily influenced by your spotter, what we call the spotter, who's overwatching that event. Because whilst you're watching or announcing on the track events, the information might not be getting back to you overly quickly. But you could certainly, what you can do is build drama. So, right, after round 4, Ryan Krauser's in the lead, but don't forget, Reese Hoffer is only 5 centimeters behind at the moment because he threw 21.18 in the second round. So that's how you build drama in the field events, perhaps. But that is determined by you being given accurate information.
Okay, thank you. Is that okay, Terry?
Yes, it is. Typically, though, from a commentary position, the production teams often give short shrift to field events. So even though there is some drama building, and you see this from club level all the way up to the world level, the tendency is for you to get to the production team usually gets to field events at or near the conclusion. So very often the commentator is kind of making it up as they go along, if you understand what I'm saying, Robert. In that, it's already happened. The drama is gone a lot of the time. So you're capturing, and it's not the fault of the commentator, but you're capturing excitement when the excitement has passed probably 2 or 3 rounds ago.
Yeah, I totally appreciate that. And when field events are covered properly, they have a drama that's absolutely unrivaled. I mean, what a great moment for Barshin, especially coming back from what could easily have been a career-ending injury for him in Doha, and I know he is Qatari, and there was the home scenario, but I just thought that was an unbelievable story, and the way a high jump competition builds to a conclusion, especially if somebody has passed at one and has to clear the next one to jump to overtake someone. It's got amazing drama, the field events, but you are beholden in a television context, which is what you seem to be alluding to. You're entirely beholden to what the director is choosing to show you. As a commentator, I mean, somebody as authoritative as Steve Brown, if he's in contact with the director, would be telling the director, right, we've got to get to this because I want to see round 4 of so-and-so. In a world feed scenario, you don't necessarily have the option of trying to give your thoughts to the director. It's the other way round, because the director is serving dozens and dozens of countries. So you haven't got the option of talking back to him or her. You're just beholden to what shots he or she gives you. So you are right. And I think there is, in the broader context, there is a move towards giving field events greater prominence in track and field meets, especially at a major championship. You'll find certain countries are better at adhering to that. The Germans are brilliant. If they're directing an event, they will give absolute due diligence to the field events, especially the throwing events. Same regarding the Finns. Probably the Norwegians as well, after Torkelson and just the general understanding of athletics knowledge. The Greeks, again, because they've got such good triple jumpers and pole vaulters. So it depends on the nationality of who's directing and the ethos with which they're directing. But yeah, listen, there's, in a funny kind of way, there is no drama like a field event that's building to a crescendo. But it depends on the person directing.
Okay, thank you. And Kev Mason, your hand's raised.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thank you. And apologies if this isn't quite the right forum for it. But I've done some quite small events and some medium and some fairly big events commentating. And I wondered, Rob, if you had any tips for how someone like me or others might take it to the next level and get their name on the radar of bigger companies.
Well, that's going to come by being recommended. So it might be the people you're working with. It might be somehow getting a shortened section of what you're doing to a director or a producer who you know might actually watch what you've done, rather than just pay it lip service. So you need a name of somebody who you know is in the industry. You know, for instance, let's say, it depends the level to which you're aspiring, but let's say you want to take the next step and you want to join, say, I don't know, Vinco's crew of commentators. Then you would try and get in touch with somebody from Vinco and say, look, would you have a listen, see if you think I'm any good? And if I'm all right, tell me how I can get better. And then it becomes, then if you are trying to take it somewhere, then the level of prep does become relevant. And there is no, there's no reason. I mean, I'm nothing special, but I'm lucky. I've been doing it a very long time. But it never fails to amaze me the amount of homework you have to do, because, when you're at a major championship, of course, there are certain facts that you have to look for, but on your start sheet. But the more prep you do in advance, for some reason, the more these numbers and these relevant statistics just pop into your head at the right time, in a way that you wouldn't have time to source that piece of information whilst the race is unfolding. But I find, for instance, that my memory is much better when I have physically written something down. So even if I'm not actively looking at my sheet of 100-meter times from Doha, I would have remembered that Gatlin had run 10 on the nose on the 19th of May, and that Kirui was just behind him and actually had run a 10.0 bits a couple of days before that. I wouldn't be so I wouldn't have been able to remember those pieces of information as quickly if I'd written them onto a document on a computer. I personally need to physically write that number down, and then I'm twice as likely to remember it. So you'll find that you'll get your own system as you go along. But on a practical level, you need to get examples of your work to the right people, and so they can tell you how to improve.
Cool. That's brilliant. Thanks very much. Thank you for that.
No worries.
Just one more typed in. Alex has said it's quite hard to see what's happening when the runners are on the opposite side of the track during a race. How do you deal with this? Binoculars.
I forgot to mention that. Bins. Very, very helpful. Very helpful indeed, because you don't need to give tons of information, but you could be holding the mic with one hand, and you could be doing that and say, right, well, down the back straight, so and so leading, da 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 da. Binoculars, always helpful. Right. I always have a pair of them. The only time I wouldn't is the indoors, because the track's only 200. It's close enough that you can see it all with your own eyes.
We've got Nadine holding hand up.
And this guy, Paul Ingrui.
Oh, right. Okay. I can't see that one.
Yeah. Well, I don't know who wants to go first. Paul?
Hello? I'll go if that's okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I've got you loud and clear.
Okay. A bit of professional insight, really. I was calling once a 300-metre race, and it struck me, we were all looking out from this stand, that it would actually be better to call from outside lane to inside lane. This was about 10 or so years ago.
Huh.
And someone said, I've never heard it done like that before. And I actually stopped doing that. In the last 2 or 3 years, I've noticed increasingly that they're doing lane calls, lane 8 to lane 1. Is there a reason?
I've noticed it, because obviously I've been out there doing it. I don't know what the reason is to that. I think there is a reason, but I can't remember. But a few things are changing. I mean, we were told, and this is so hard to suddenly change how you do this, but World Athletics have decided that fastest loser is no longer an acceptable term.
Yeah.
So you now have to say fastest non-automatic qualifier. Now, you're adding in 2 words that don't need to be there, because to me, it makes perfect. The fastest loser is the fastest. It's so obvious. It's ingrained in us from a British point of view for decades. However, they feel it's a bit negative. You can sort of see the arguments to that. So from here on in, or until somebody tells us otherwise, it's the fastest non-automatic qualifier. I don't know the answer to that. And also the other thing that we've had a few times in recent years is it'll go 8-7, 1-2, and then the middle lanes. So I've seen that as well. I don't know if there's a specific one-off answer. What I would say is, do you remember how they got the athletes out onto the track for the sprint finals in Doha? I know Doha feels like it was a bloody lifetime ago, but some of the build-up in the stadium, even though they were half empty, was absolutely amazing, with names superimposed in lights on the track. Absolutely spine-tingling. With a full stadium, those moments would have been incredible. So, they are trying a lot of different things to get us more in line with with the kind of show-stopping moments that lifts us above other sports. But specifically, outside to in, I don't know the reason for that off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you then. Thank you.
Nadine, he's been waiting ages. He's got the big headphones on.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for a great session. And Alison, thanks very much for facilitating that as well. Thank you. My question would be, I've commentated a few times at a few events, different sporting events as well. And I'm due to do a couple more for Shaftesbury Barnet over the next couple of months as well. My question would be, when you've got specific events and you've got different sponsors or people who are providing prizes or meeting hosts, I've tended to kind of maybe give them a plug at the beginning and at the end. do you have a particular system when you think it's appropriate to mention those sponsors or those prize providers during that meeting, or would you just leave it as in the beginning and in the end?
Oh, look, I think you just play it by ear. I mean, you know, if they're giving money and they're helping the sport, then, you know, I don't think it's as regimented, is it? As if you're announcing, it's not like you're restricted. In a broadcasting context, you have to be very careful how many times you mention a specific sponsor, because you'll get wrapped over the knuckles if you do it too often. You've got far more flexibility when you're announcing, and if you know that that there's a guy who's really passionate, or a woman who's really passionate about a certain event or a certain sport, and their company's given money, yeah, why not give them a plug? You can almost say, look, thanks very much to, you know, Nancy so-and-so, she works for such and such a company, and they've actually sponsored. They're going to put in, you know, a couple of $100 for the winner of this one to get some extra kit. I just do whatever you feel comfortable. I certainly wouldn't, you know, we need as many sponsors coming into athletics as possible. So if there's some warm-hearted individuals helping out with some decent prizes that will buy some kids or some aspiring athletes some kit, then yeah, why not? Why not give them a plug? You're not restricted by the television schedule, so crack on.
Well, I think it's always a good thing if you can, as you say, if it's good for the sport, it's always good to do that. But I didn't know whether you had any hard and fast rules for that. But thanks very much, Rob. Appreciate it.
No worries.
I hope you've all found the session useful and enjoyed Rob's stories and his experience and time that he's given us. So thank you very much, Rob, and thank you everybody for taking part.
No worries. Cheers, Katie.